Who controls the world? Much of this research I am indebted to one account in Substack called Kaihatsu. I've given you a bunch of references, but I have enough recollections from various other guests on how the world operates so that you can basically connect the dots. But the bulk of the work was done from a series of articles that appeared in this new social media platform. It may not be new, but it's new to me, substack.com. It's a free platform in the sense that you won't get deleted, you won't get gaslighted, you are free to express your opinion. This again is a general concept of who actually controls the world today. It's not who you think. You're seeing manifestations of this in how things are playing out, especially in Europe now. For example, allowing so many illegals to come in, controlling so many different governments. Even elected leaders are being cast aside. What happened to Romania? What happened in France? Marine Le Pen is now imprisoned. And what is happening in Germany? AfD has got the highest percentage of vote, but will they be able to form the government? Probably not. So these are all the things that are happening around the world. So somebody is the puppeteer. Somebody is pulling all the strings and making things go in a certain way. For example, today, Western Europe is mobilizing its armies. I mean, if you look at the largest army, it's United Kingdom, and they have 60,000 people. And Keir Starmer bravely makes a statement that he's going to deploy 30,000 in the field. That 30,000 in the field actually means 10,000 actual bodies that can fight. The others are all doing logistics. So they are way down in terms of having their own armies. They are planning of, mobilizing these things, putting money into making their own armies, creating armament. It's going to take a few years, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many years. It's going to take a long time. But all these things are being talked about today. And organizations like the NATO, some of the banks, some of the big companies, all these things are tools that are forcing things towards a certain direction. That's what we're going to be talking about. This is a very good, interesting slide deck. I'd like to, I'll come in once in a while to tell you about who else talked about these instances so you can immediately relate to some of the other guests that came on our channel to talk about it. Here we go. A small request to all of you to please like this video so we will find out who really controls the world. Well, this is defined as, many cartels that are in play that actually play the whole thing. They orchestrate, they do this here, do this there, and so on and so forth. So what is a cartel? A cartel is defined as a coalition of political, financial, or special interest groups united by a common cause. For example, Trump had, as soon as he became the president for the second time, said that Mexico is run by cartels. Who are these cartels? Drug cartels. But it's not just drug cartel. It's not just associated with drugs. Cartels exist in other things also. While drug and oil cartels are widely known, oil cartel being like OPEC, OPEC, and there are more powerful and far-reaching cartels termed as globalist cartel. What is a globalist cartel? The globalist cartel is described as a coalition that allegedly controls political and financial systems across much of the Western world. These are entities that can influence government such as the United States, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Think about what was happening in the Biden administration. Where did they find the money? Because they just completely threw budgets to the wind. If they were falling short of money in one department, they'll take money from another department and shove it into this. What was the need for bringing in up to 15 million illegals? Because New World Order, open societies, no borders. Somewhere these people have a plan that they think they can regain control after letting in so many people. I'm not privy to that, but I can make some guesses on how they were going to do that. Let's leave that for another day. Today, we'll just look at what happened amongst all these different countries. You take Canada, for example, Mark Carney. It is believed that this guy has so much push from these globalist cartels that he somehow got thrust into this whole Canadian politics. He's going to be the counterbalance against United States. How is that even possible? Was he even in contention to become the leader of the Liberal Party? Was he ever a member of the Liberal Party? Ask questions. Canadian brothers and sisters, find out, because this is your last chance to restore some order to your lives. I'm not a Canadian citizen. I can only tell you what I'm seeing. I hope that you can see your way clear through all this, confusing things that are being created. There are the horror of horror in United States is the IRS didn't have the same database that the Department of Treasury had. The budgets had a different database. Everything running in their own little world, with nary a care for where the money was coming from. And that's why we are seeing when Doge went into Department of Treasury, 4.9 trillion unaccounted. And then they started putting some tags that it has to have a certain reason for being spent. But what about what happened during the Biden administration's regime? And this is why they're making all this noise, because they don't want you to find out. Well, the people in the know are saying that much of the funding in Europe was actually money that was coming from United States. The flow of money was only in one direction, from US into Europe, and from there all these derivatives, settlements, this, that, because Ukraine was this big reason. US was determined to go into Ukraine. I mean, think about it. When Biden came into power, who was seen as the main adversary? China. But suddenly, Biden and Blinken paint Russia as a bigger enemy. Nobody complained. And then to try and divert your attention, they kept having all these illegals come in. So everybody started looking at that. So many such things happen. They create these illusions, they create these obfuscations, diversions. So their main target is something, but they are trying to make you see somewhere else. This is the standard modus operandi. But clearly, these are like they're having a global orchestra, as a conductor, it's a very clear, detailed plan. Ergo, you have the toolkit lists where everything happened. I mean, did you notice that when the protests happened across campuses in the United States following the October 7th incident, that every campus protest had the same type of tents, the same set of things that everybody was having, the students, and suddenly people started realizing that the people who were protesting in these campuses were not actually students. They were bussed in from somewhere else. And they were all being paid money. Where else did it happen? Shaheen Bagh. You see how this thing goes? This is really, really the thing. They decide that this is how the world shall go, and they leave no stone unturned. And in order to get there, they orchestrate laws and measures aligned with their agenda. Look at what is happening in United Kingdom. Two-tier care. There's one set of laws for the citizens of United Kingdom, residents of United Kingdom, and there is a less diluted, relaxed law for Muslims of United Kingdom. In fact, they are officially opposing any kind of inquiry into the grooming gangs, which is why Elon Musk, along with Nigel Farage's party, one member of the parliament, they are trying to have an independent inquiry conducted on the grooming gangs. And everybody else is pushing back, because the Labour Party is afraid that any kind of investigation of that kind is going to hurt the sentiments of the Muslim people in United Kingdom. I mean, amazing. This is what really is going on. And the major decisions are all essentially being choreographed and told, you shall do this, you shall not do this. So what is globalism? There is a textbook definition of globalism, and there is a real world definition of globalism. Textbook definition of globalism is global cooperation for mutual benefit in policy and economy. Both sides benefit. But the real world definition, elitist control of global wealth, resources, and governance under a neo-feudal system led by a few thousand allies. See, the textbook definition sounds very, idealistic, but the real world is totally different. And that's where the problem comes. So we're going to see who is in this core power structure. We talk about them as deep state, council, crown council, Club of Rome, 300, all these things. But essentially, it all comes down to a set of people who have been managing the world affairs for hundreds of years. East India Company, Dutch East India Company, the Habsburgs, the Queen of England, the monarchy in Netherlands, all these people, plus a bunch of other companies that have been around for a long time in one shape or way or form. Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and so on and so forth. I'm going to give you some names. These are all people that have been addressed as members of this deep state. However, you will not see anybody come out and say, yes, this is the deep state. It meets once every so often, and this is its agenda. We shall rule the world. They've been ruling the world for a lot of time. It's now that people are waking up to what is really going on. They are actually waking up and smelling the coffee. Again, this is an observation of how the world appears to operate. You need to understand that you need to do a lot of research to try and connect the dots here. Major General Rajiv Narayanan, Adi Achin, and a few others have done a fair amount of work in trying to unearth this. And I'm hoping that this will sort of lay the platform for others to go in and build on this. Because the more you understand, the more you can ward off incoming threats. This is the problem. They are unable to stifle the voice of social media and many such platforms that have come up now. And it used to be controlled using press and media like TV and so on and so forth. But now it is becoming harder and harder. That's also a frustration for them. So the people who have control, they hold approximately 85% of the global monetary wealth and over 70% of the planet's resources. Not all family members of the oligarchs are themselves involved in this. It's a small set of people. However, these are people who don't have anything else to do. They are sitting on large, vast fortunes, and they are just trying to say, how best can I, become even more powerful? And the operatives are often rewarded with power, wealth, and protection, and gaining mini oligarch status. Which are the members? This is a likely power structure. This is not something that is cast in concrete. Some may be out of it, some may be still in it. But these are the names of people who've been around for a long time, whose names have been alleged to have been part of this. Some we can say, yeah, most likely Rothschild, for example, Rockefeller, Soros, Gates, BlackRock, Vanguard, Morgan, Warburg, Schiff, Goldman Sachs, Lazard, Lehman, Cohn, Loeb, Oppenheimer, DuPont, Astor, and others. And these also, they've been around for generations now. For example, if you take a look at the Habsburg dynasty, they ruled Austria and other areas from 12th century or 13th century all the way up to the 19th century. And if there's a series on Netflix called The Empress. If you watch that, they talk about the Habsburg Empire in the 1850s, which is when it started becoming a little bit, unhinged, for example. And you can see, they have characters coming in as bankers who will be funding these war efforts, the rise of Italy as a single entity, Garibaldi there, and so on and so forth. It's a very compelling series to watch. You will get a lot of information about the Habsburg, which is mentioned in the top global oligarchs, Netherlands royal family, the Vatican, Habsburg, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Agnellis, British royal family, DuPonts, Morgans, Warburgs, Wallenbergs, Astors, Van Noyen, Bill Gates. Bill Gates, recent graduate from his Microsoft fortune. Then the Cartel organization, the organizations and operatives that control them. Again, not everybody in all these organizations are, doing it, but there are some critical people who seem to be in and out of these things, and they are also navigating them towards a certain set of decisions, events, and making sure that the world navigates towards that. What are those? Bank of International Settlements, Federal Reserve, Bank of England, JP Morgan Chase, European Union, United Nations, BlackRock, IMF, European Central Bank, World Bank, Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, World Economic Forum, WHO, and Tavistock Institute. These are just a small set. You know that Trump said that he's going to be exiting WHO. I don't think he went to the WEF this time. You can go. I mean, there's nothing wrong in going or attending or being seen there. It is what they imbibe from that, how they get themselves, they allow themselves to be manipulated by them. That is the big problem. Even Federal Reserve, for example, you can say that Powell is not doing what Trump wants him to do, but I don't think Powell is a member of this. He seems to have a fairly level head on his shoulders, and he is basically fighting inflation. Inflation he sees as the biggest enemy, and he was, in fact, not listening to Biden also. So I'm just saying that you shouldn't say, oh, this person works in this and therefore he's part of the deep state. That's not true. That is absolutely not true. The cartel allegedly owns or influences all mainstream Western media outlets via global corporate control. See, when smaller companies merge to become bigger companies, what is the examples? What is the reason given? Say better management efficiency. Why is that? Because they say, oh, there are two marketing departments. We don't need them. One marketing is enough. Two sales departments. You don't need two sales departments. One sales department is enough. Two engineering departments, research department. You don't need two. One is enough because we are going to do only this thing. See, this is how this has been going on for the last 40, 50 years, where, banks in the United States, for example, have all merged to become bigger and bigger and bigger entities. And now you have a few which are too big to fail. So when they have this huge power, they can shape public opinion, they can set narratives, and they can also suppress dissenting voices. They use financial power to influence leading universities and academic institutions. Professors and students may unknowingly support cartel agendas due to institutional alignment and financial dependency. I mean, students are the easiest to sway. They come into this idealistic world. They think that, oh, every injustice should be addressed. Unfortunately, they don't realize that some of these are manufactured narratives, and they go with the flow. And because 85 to 90% of the faculty in all the United States universities are liberal, therefore, everybody starts thinking that there's a huge amount of bad being committed by a few. Actually, the opposite is true. All I'm trying to say here is you need to do your homework. You need to read different sources. Don't stay in your silo, because that becomes your echo chamber. Don't stay in that. Go outside of that silo. See what else is saying. If somebody is opposing your point of view, try to understand why that person is opposing you. Why that person is opposing your point of view. Be open, because sometimes the light bulb will go off and then you'll say, oh, maybe this is not quite true. The cartel includes dominant global banking organizations: European Central Bank, World Bank, IMF, Federal Reserve, Bank of International Settlement, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, and many others. They are directly or indirectly controlling smaller financial bodies. Most employees, most likely 75 to 80%, are totally unaware of the deeper agenda. So these are all, like I said, once the top level is identified, they in turn go to these organizations, and from there the orders come down to universities, governments, and news media. Modern global oligarchs trace their wealth back to, you guessed it right, East India Company and Dutch East India Company, which were the most powerful and profitable corporations in history. For them, nothing was about making money. Opium wars to bring China to its knees. British waged that from India. And the Dutch overnight, I think, quadrupled the prices of spices. And that's how the East India Company itself was born. Because before that, the Dutch East India Company was the only one that was selling spices into Europe. Why did Europe need spices? Like, clove, which is long in Hindi, and other spices, because they had strong smell. And if you had mutton or meat at home, you didn't have any freezers, no fridges and freezers at those days. So as the meat dried over time, it started stinking. So you needed something to really overpower that stink, and that's where the spices came in. So without spices, old meat could not be consumed. It was so rotten. Actually, meat rots, right? So I'm not a meat eater, so I can't be really good at this. I'm not the best person to tell you about what happened. But this was one of the main reasons why spices were so popular in Europe. Though these two entities, East India Company and Dutch East India Company, were dissolved in the 18th and 19th centuries, the network and influence were absorbed into new forms: banks, corporations, and global financial institutions. Now, there's also other avenues of money that is coming in again that is being used by these. For example, drugs. Everywhere there is drug trade, somewhere some of that part is finding its way into the pockets of some of these people. And because they are, controlling a lot of these things, opium, heroin, all these various drugs, they have their people in various places that will make sure that their cut keeps coming. And if there is a particular government, a particular prime minister or a president who's standing up to them, guess what happens? either gets deposed, thrown out, or even eliminated. I tell you that people keep telling that this cartel, globalist cartel, has its sights firmly trained at Trump. We had two attempts, and we don't know. I mean, he probably is having a much more critical security detail now, which is essentially making sure that no harm befalls the president. They are deeply connected with global banks, creating a mutual dependency for expansion and protection. And this coordinated transformation is now being described as a bizarre world. For example, Europe wants to continue to have the war between Ukraine and Russia. And in order to get the people's buy-in, they keep, hyping that if you allow Russia to stop in Ukraine, if we don't support Ukraine, then Russia will attack us. I'm told that a German division is now in Lithuania along the border. You see how this is being spread slowly but steadily? Germany doesn't still have a settled government. And already these things are happening. All these countries are spending a lot more in their military now. NATO is being told, look, you need to get ready for war. But didn't you start it in 2021 when Biden came? I told you, right? The adversary was identified clearly as China. Then why go and point to Russia? And then Russia started, amassing troops along the Ukrainian border. That happened in the latter part of 2021. Biden took office in the early part of 2021. It was Biden administration that said Russia is our enemy. I mean, it sounded very strange for those of us who are following all these events, geopolitics. Why suddenly you are manufacturing somebody else? What is in it for you? So clearly you know that these globalists had complete ins into the working of the Biden administration. I'm just connecting the dots now. Tell me I'm wrong. So this sort of stuff where irrationality follows, country after country, you can see that somebody wants a certain outcome. One of the thoughts that is being told is that there is so much debt that has been issued by some of them that there's only one way they can reset all that, and that is by going to war. Once you go to war, you can have some emergency powers declared and say that, all the old bonds, we will no longer pay anything anymore, and all that gets reset, and suddenly a new financial system may emerge, and so on and so forth. This is another story that is being made. It could end up being true. But all I'm trying to tell you is that many narratives, many people are in it, and I'm going to continue to bring guests who will probably tell you their viewpoint of the world. You're already getting a lot of feedback, not just from India, but from United States, from Europe, from Middle East, everywhere, from China. You're getting people to come in and weigh on how their view of the world is. So you see that everybody agrees that there is a small group of people who are trying to make some things go in a certain way. And they are facing a lot of resistance thanks to leaders with spine, such as Narendra Modi or President Trump, and a few others too. Vladimir Putin, you may not agree with him. You may say that, he attacked Ukraine and caused death. Did you know that 5 Chinese soldiers were captured by Ukraine? Only 2 are alive still. We don't know what happened to the other 3. And these people are all available. I mean, they have given interviews and things of that nature on social media. You can get those links. Just look up. So the idea of a globalist cartel is usually dismissed as a tinfoil hat conspiracy, that nothing of that nature is happening. But you can see that a well-organized group, a well-funded group with a unified mission can control a much larger disorganized organization. Now think of it like this. The cartel's dominance can be like, one side is like a professional football team, and the other side is a group of untrained locals who just pick up street football and they are playing. That's how it looks like. And unfortunately or fortunately, that's exactly what is happening. The globalist cartel want what? They want control over global wealth, resources, and populations. And this is why they keep thinking about new world order, that people should not have borders, all sorts of nonsense. Will this thing stop, and when will it stop? That is a question that many people are asking themselves. Now, let's take a look at some of the narratives and agendas. Pandemics, for example, COVID-19, mRNA vaccine, fast track without much checks, UN Agenda 2030, a master plan for control under the guise of sustainable development. WHO pandemic treaties, tools for global health dictatorship. Climate crisis. The whole climate crisis thing, Donald Trump has walked away from that. The United States is no longer in climate control. It is no longer a part of WTO. And I'm sure they are going to get out of WHO if they have not already gotten out. So many of these UN organizations are being abandoned by the United States. So that's one reason why the globalist cartel doesn't like Trump and keep on piling. Even last weekend, we had these orchestrated protests across various cities in the United States, except that now people are coming to understand it. So they are able to not allow them much room to operate and not allow them much destruction. In fact, now with a lot of CCTV footage, the illegals are also under a lot of pressure that if they come out in the street, they could be caught. So people are very muted, and that's why you are seeing not much resistance to what is going on in the United States. They will create any kind of a crisis to get back control. CBDC is unfortunately a good concept, but now it has completely gotten transferred as a way in which you can turn on or off somebody's power to use their own currency to buy stuff. You can say, thou shalt not buy this, but thou shalt only buy that. Because CBDC gives you that kind of a power. Although properly designed system could make it easier, however, it's now gotten a bad rap because of people's imagination and also what you can do, assuming you design a system like that. It's a little complicated for me to go into it in this particular monologue, but CBDCs are now being looked at with a lot of suspicions. And what is this thing about mass migration? Why no borders? Why no borders is because that way they can bring down orderly systems, make civil war, and then come in and take control. And they'll be the first ones to ruthlessly massacre some of the elements that have been brought in from other countries. I'm telling you. That part has not been implemented yet, but they seem to think that they can easily step in and do that. Gender ideology for minors, this gender change stuff. And what are the different agendas? We talked about censorship, information control, World Health Organization, then climate agenda, migration, invasion, digital ID, digital currencies. All these things are being done. So how do you do this thing? You're starting by manufacturing a threat. Inflate the threat to make it worse than it actually is. By the way, how you do this thing, manufacturing a threat, this is not something that is new. How many of you heard of the name Randolph Hearst? Randolph Hearst, along with his opponent, and this person's name Joseph Pulitzer. These are considered the first ones to come up with yellow journalism. And what did Joseph Pulitzer do? After making a lot of money, he instituted a prize, which is supposed to be one of the highest prizes for journalists, Pulitzer Prize. What happened? Hearst was one of those key people who wrote and fear-mongered so much that Spain and America went to war, United States, in 1898. So you have to go back and read that part. In fact, Hearst has a castle called the Hearst Castle, about 60, 70 miles from where I live on the coast. A very grand mansion that he built. And it's something, it's like a tourist attraction. If you want to go and see it along the coast of California, it's there. And, he used to have Charlie Chaplin as a guest and so on and so forth. A very interesting state. Okay. So 1898 war was completely engineered, it is alleged, by the Hearst publishers, because they had a lot of publishers across the United States, East Coast, West Coast. They managed much of the print network at that time, and they just went after this and ended up creating this war, which actually profited the United States because they got new properties. They also sort of got control over Cuba and so on and so forth. So inflate the threat to make it worse than it actually is. Create as much fear and panic as possible using disinformation and gaslighting propaganda. Pay a lot of money to corrupt individuals in government and private industry to push your threat. I mean, Rahul Gandhi, for example, who does he, tango to? Who is his master? Is it CCP? Is it this globalist cartel? Who? because he seems to go abroad so frequently and comes back, and then he gets keyed up and he starts talking about something. Sell your solution to your own manufactured threat. That's where you make the money. Use the news media you own to censor all opposition and push your false narrative 24/7. This was the formula used by the Hearst publications and also Joseph Pulitzer, who was his rival at that time. Both of them followed similar, strategies. And now we are 100 years later, but a lot of things haven't still changed. Unfortunately, this is where we are today. And I have to be very careful in using words here to not, implicate any one individual. But do you see that the Epstein files have still not seen the light of day? You know why? Because it is believed a lot of the members of the globalist cartels used to take part in some similar things, and they are called as red rooms, ROOMS. Look it up. It might be available. There may be some videos available on that. You can understand more about it. And I don't want to go into it. It's not a decent thing to say or do here. Unfortunately, it has to do with child pedophilia and so on and so forth. And it just breaks my heart to understand that somebody with unlimited money, resources, wealth, unbelievable riches, no need to go to work. You can do whatever you want. They end up indulging in these kinds of, despicable acts and thoughts. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.